The temperature in the grand ballroom of the Evergreen Resort dropped as my eyes locked with hers. My champagne flute froze halfway to my lips. The bride turned, glass raised in a toast, and my careful facade crumbled. Grace, my sister. The sister who'd stolen my future while my parents held the door open for her. Her smile faltered, recognition morphing from shock to panic. Behind her, my mother's face drained of color before flushing crimson. My father moved protectively toward Grace, creating a barrier between us, just as he'd done all our lives. "What are you doing here?" my mother hissed, loud enough that nearby guests turned. For a heartbeat, I was 21 again, standing in the rain with a suitcase, homeless and alone. But Michael's hand on my back anchored me to the present. "My wife is a guest," Michael said, his voice firm. "She's the CEO of Medova. We were invited by the groom." The name Medova rippled through the cluster of medical professionals nearby. "CEO?" A woman in burgundy turned to her companion. "That's Amber Collins." My name is Emma, though I use Amber professionally to distance myself from my past. I'm 32 and founder of a medical technology company. This is the story of how I built an empire from my family's betrayal. Michael's hand remained steady against my back. Leo tugged at his bow tie, his 6-year-old patience wearing thin. "Mom, is that lady in the white dress your friend?" he asked, innocent to the tension. Dr. Daniel Brooks approached, confusion creasing his brow as he looked between Grace's frozen face and mine. "You know the CEO of Medova?" he asked my parents, then turned to me. "We've been trying to partner with them for months. Your patient monitoring system is revolutionizing post-surgical care." Grace attempted a smile that faltered. My parents exchanged panicked glances as whispers grew louder. I'd spent 11 years burying memories of that rainy night when my world collapsed, when I discovered my college fund emptied, transferred to an account I didn't recognize. The same day, a package arrived from Grace with photos of her spring break in Cancun. Stanford graduate and brilliant mind managing her family's medical practice back in Vermont. Daniel beamed, his arm around Grace's waist as he introduced her. I stood watching my sister nod demurely. Her pearl earrings caught the light when she tilted her head, a gesture I recognized from childhood, her tell when stretching the truth. "The Collins Clinic has been serving our community for 30 years, she said. "We specialize in family medicine with some geriatric care." A silver-haired woman approached me. "You're Amber Collins. Your presentation at last month's medical summit was brilliant. Your patient monitoring system is changing post-surgical recovery protocols across 3 states now." 4, actually, I smiled. "We just finalized implementation with Northwestern's hospital network." Across the room, Grace fumbled through a response about platelet therapy trends. The doctor questioning her exchanged a glance with his colleague. "I thought Stanford's medical program had shifted away from that approach 3 years ago," he said. Grace's laugh floated a pitch too high. "Well, you know how these academic debates go." Daniel's expression shifted almost imperceptibly. He was noticing the discrepancy. "Amber." My father's voice was the same commanding tone that once sent me scurrying to answer phones at the clinic while Grace practiced piano. "You need to leave. You're ruining Grace's day." Michael stiffened, but I placed a steadying hand on his arm. "I was invited by Daniel," I replied. "Perhaps you should explain why that upsets you." My father's face reddened. "Don't play innocent. You showing up like this, flaunting your whatever company you claim to run." "Medova is hardly a claim, Dennis." Michael stepped forward. "The medical technology conference in Boston featured your daughter as keynote speaker. Her monitoring systems are in 27 hospitals nationwide." A nearby guest turned, recognizing the company name. My mother hovered near Grace, desperately trying to steer Daniel's colleagues away. Too late. The connections were forming throughout the room, medical professionals recognizing my name. Leo tugged at my hand. "Mom, can I have some cake now?" "You promised." "In a minute, sweetheart." Leo looked at Grace. "Is that lady your sister? Does she go to Stanford like you did?" My father's face drained of color. Leo continued innocently. "You showed me your old college pictures. The red buildings were pretty." Grace drifted closer. Daniel beside her. Her face froze at Leo's words. "Stanford?" Daniel said, looking between us. "You went to Stanford too, Amber?" "Class of 2014, I answered simply. Daniel's colleague turned to him. "You didn't mention your wife's sister was Amber Collins. Her work on predictive algorithms for post-surgical complications is revolutionary." The weight of 11 years of lies settled visibly on Grace's shoulders. She reached for Daniel's arm, but he stepped away, his attention now on the conversation around me. Later that evening, Daniel guided me away from the crowd. "Let's find somewhere quieter." We settled in a small alcove. "I apologize for the awkwardness," he began, straightening his bow tie. "You didn't know Grace had a sister," I finished, keeping my voice neutral. Daniel's eyes widened. "She mentioned a sister once, but said you dropped out of college after a semester, that you couldn't handle the pressure and disappeared." "I graduated summa cum laude," I said, "while working 3 jobs. 3 jobs? Mornings at a coffee shop, evenings at hospital reception, weekends at a call center. I put myself through school part-time, no family support." Daniel's expression shifted from confusion to calculation. "Stanford?" he asked. I shook my head. "Community college first, then state university. I couldn't afford Stanford after I discovered my college fund had been reallocated to Grace's education." The ballroom blurred as memories surfaced. Sleeping on couches, showering at the YMCA, eating ramen for weeks to save for textbooks. "The hospital where I worked reception," I continued. "That's where I met Michael. He was a resident then." That night, hunched over textbooks during my dinner break, Michael stopping at my desk, curious about my diagrams. "You understand Kellerman's patient flow theory?" he'd asked, surprised. "It's flawed," I'd replied. "The bottleneck isn't intake, it's documentation requirements between departments." He'd pulled up a chair. The next day, he brought coffee and questions about my ideas. Within months, we were developing the prototype that would become Medova's cornerstone product. Daniel leaned forward. "And Medova? Grace mentioned you worked some office job." I couldn't help but smile. "We started in our apartment 7 years ago. Last quarter's revenue was just under $400 million. Across the room, my parents flanked Grace like sentinels. They cast frantic glances our way. "They're going to try to separate us soon," I said. Michael approached, phone discreetly positioned at his side, documenting behavior while appearing casual, a protective measure we'd learned. "Everything all right here?" he asked. "Just catching up," I replied, gratitude warming my chest. On cue, my mother bustled toward us. "Daniel, there's someone from Boston General dying to meet you." Her eyes slid past me as if I were invisible. Daniel stood his ground. "In a moment, Margaret. Amber and I are having an important conversation." My mother's smile stiffened. Always the attention seeker, our Amber. She's always been jealous of her sister's accomplishments. I remained seated, back straight. Michael's hand rested on my shoulder. When the bathroom door swung closed behind me later, I wasn't surprised to find Grace inside, reapplying mascara with trembling hands. "Why are you doing this to me?" she demanded, voice breaking. "Doing what exactly?" "Ruining my wedding, making Daniel question everything." "I'm not doing anything," I replied softly. "I'm simply existing." Grace slammed her mascara onto the counter. "You were supposed to stay gone." For the first time, I saw the fear behind her anger, the terror of a house of cards beginning to collapse. "They told everyone you were a dropout," she continued, "that you couldn't handle responsibility, that you were—" "And yet here I am," I interrupted, "handling quite a lot." When I emerged, my composure intact, I returned to Michael's side. Grace followed minutes later, makeup freshly applied, but something essential had shattered behind her eyes. I noticed the subtle shift in the room, wedding guests drifting toward us, a neurosurgeon discussing patient monitoring with Michael, a hospital administrator slipping me her card. Daniel stood at my elbow, attentive to the conversation, asking questions about Medova's technology. His new bride hovered at the periphery. Father approached. "Daniel, this is Grace's wedding. Let's focus on her accomplishments." The silence that followed filled the room. All eyes flicked between Daniel and Dennis, then to Grace, whose smile stretched thin. Sometimes, silence holds more truth than words. I checked my watch. We'd stayed long enough. Michael caught my eye across the room, his slight nod confirming we were on the same wavelength. Are we leaving now? Leo tugged at my hand. Swimming pool time? Yes, buddy, just one more thing. I slid a small envelope from my clutch. Inside rested a certificate for Medova stock. Not life-changing money, but enough to make a statement. This is who I am now. We found Daniel near the bar, watching Grace with the first hints of doubt in his eyes. We're heading out, I told him, offering the envelope. Congratulations again. He took it with warmth. Thank you for coming, especially considering... I appreciate the invitation. Closing this chapter matters more than I realized. Daniel leaned closer. I'd like to visit Medova sometime, professionally. My assistant will set it up. I offered my business card, aware of Grace watching us. Mother glided toward us. Amber was always so driven. Of course, she had advantages we couldn't provide Grace. The blatant reversal of truth would have wounded me once. Now it was almost comical. What advantages were those, Mrs. Collins? Michael asked. The 3 jobs while putting herself through night school or sleeping on friends' couches after you took her tuition money. Leo looked up at me. Aren't those people your family, Mom? The question silenced everyone within hearing distance. I knelt to his level. They're relatives, buddy. Family is different. Father approached. You can't just waltz back into our lives and... I'm not interested in walking back into anything. My voice cut through his bluster. I built my own life, which is exactly what you forced me to do when you showed me the door. Thank you, I told my parents, causing them to blink in confusion. Thank you for not giving me a chance. You made me build my own. I took Leo's hand. Michael fell into step beside us as we made our exit, unhurried, dignified, complete. In the lobby, Leo spun with childish delight. Pool time. As we crossed toward the elevators, I caught our reflection, a family of 3, solid and connected. Behind us, I glimpsed Daniel watching our departure, then turning back to his new bride with new questions in his eyes. Some weddings mark beginnings. This one marked an ending. 1 month later, I scanned the partnership proposal from Boston Memorial, a contract worth 8 figures. Medova's patient monitoring system had reduced post-surgical complications by 37% in their trial run. My assistant's voice crackled. Dr. Daniel Brooks is here to see you. Daniel entered like a man carrying invisible weight. His shoulders curled forward, suit jacket wrinkled. I've consulted with a lawyer about annulment possibilities, he said. Everything Grace told me was fabricated. She never attended Stanford. She never managed your parents' clinic. She's the receptionist. I'm sorry to hear that, I said, and meant it. Your parents made her the face of their practice while they... His voice trailed off. The billing practices at their clinic. They've been charging Medicare for procedures never performed. Grace helped them do it. I began investigating after noticing inconsistencies in Grace's medical knowledge at the wedding, Daniel explained. I requested her Stanford records directly from the university, claiming I needed them for our honeymoon travel health insurance. They had no record of her. I didn't mean to drag you back into this, Daniel continued, but when I started investigating Grace's background, I found patterns, discrepancies. They used my college fund for Grace, I said. When I confronted them, they told me I wasn't Stanford material anyway. The irony is, I never wanted to be a doctor. I wanted to improve medical systems. You've done that, Daniel said. Medova is transforming post-surgical care across the country. The clinic is being investigated, he finally said. I submitted anonymous information after discovering the extent of the fraud. I found billing documents in their home office when Grace was out one weekend. My phone buzzed with a text from Michael. Picking up Leo early. Zude, join us? A warmth spread through my chest. This was my real family now. What will you do? I asked Daniel. File for annulment. Cooperate with investigators. Start over. He hesitated. I came to apologize for reconnecting you with your past and to ask, do you plan to get involved in the investigation? I could destroy them completely. One phone call from the CEO of Medova would accelerate everything. No, I said. I built my life separate from theirs. I intend to keep it that way. After Daniel left, I stood at my window. My phone vibrated with a voicemail notification. Grace's number, the third this week. She tracked me down through Daniel after he confronted her with what he knew. Michael called. You sound tired? Daniel Brooks came to see me. The family clinic is under investigation for Medicare fraud. Are you okay? Yes. The answer surprised me with its truth. My computer chimed with an incoming email, an attorney requesting information about my time at Collins Family Practice. Attached were documents requiring my testimony. They want me to testify. I told Michael. What will you do? I'll forward them copies of the clinic's original records from when I worked there, I decided. Nothing more, nothing less. Just the facts. My phone buzzed again. Another voicemail from Grace. I pressed delete without listening, the small action surprisingly final. Leo wants to see the new tiger cubs, Michael said. Tell him I'm on my way. I gathered my bag, pausing at the door. The Boston Memorial contract waited on my desk, another hospital ready to implement the system I built from nothing but determination and long nights. I closed the door behind me. Some debts can never be repaid. Some wounds never fully heal. But I've learned that moving forward doesn't require forgiveness. Sometimes it just requires letting go. 6 months later, Leo raced between our garden's raised beds, his Batman cape fluttering behind him. Mom, can I water the tomatoes? Start with the peppers, I told him. They're thirsty today. Michael appeared with 3 glasses of lemonade. Reinforcements? He called, descending the steps into our garden. Thank you, good sir, Leo responded with a wobbly bow. Michael's eyes met mine over Leo's head. The unspoken conversation. This is what matters. This garden, this boy, this life we built. The Davis Hospital Board approved the patient monitoring system, Michael said casually. The 5th major hospital chain to adopt Medova's technology this year. That's number 5, Leo announced proudly. Mom's helping all the sick people get better faster. The doorbell chimed. Michael returned with a certified letter from Grace Collins Brooks. The envelope sat on my desk for 17 minutes while I finished reviewing quarterly projections. When I finally opened it, a single sheet of cream-colored stationery slid out, covered in Grace's handwriting. Amber, the clinic closed last month. The investigation found billing irregularities going back 15 years. Daniel left me. He said he couldn't build a life with someone he couldn't trust. He was right. I'm not writing to ask for money. I'm writing because I need to tell you that you were never the problem. I was raised to believe your intelligence threatened mine. Your independence undermined my security. I believed them when they said cutting you off was necessary. I was wrong. They were wrong. And I'm sorry. Grace. What will you do? Michael asked. Nothing dramatic, I answered. I opened a document, typed for several minutes, then printed a single page. 2 weeks later, at the American Medical Technology Conference in Chicago, I spotted Grace in pale blue scrubs near the Education Pavilion, listening to a speaker discussing entry-level medical coding certification. Our eyes met across the crowded hall. No drama, just quiet recognition. She held the Medova internship application I'd sent her, clutched like a lifeline. I offered a small nod. Not forgiveness, but acknowledgement. She returned it, eyes bright with something that might be determination. We didn't approach each other. Some relationships are completed, not continued. That evening, I finalized the paperwork for the Collins First Generation Medical Scholarship. 20 students without family support would receive full tuition and mentorship next fall. Back home, I knelt in our garden digging small holes for new seedlings. Leo helped, his small hands patting soil around tender roots. Some plants don't grow well next to others, I explained. They need their own space to thrive. Like people? He asked, surprisingly perceptive. Smart boy, I whispered. Yes, like people. The sun slanted golden across our yard. Through the kitchen window, I saw Michael preparing dinner, moving easily through the space we'd created together. I pressed another seed into the dark earth. covering it gently. Some roots you're given, others you get to choose. The emergency room's fluorescent lights made my phone screen glow as I texted my parents. My hands were shaking. Mark had fallen during soccer practice, and the doctor suspected a broken wrist. "Mark's in the emergency room," I typed. "Could one of you come?" 10 minutes passed before Mom's reply appeared. "We're busy with Margaret's promotion dinner. Can't you handle it yourself? He's probably just being dramatic again." Dramatic again. My 10-year-old son with his arm bent at an unnatural angle. Something inside me, something that had been bending for years, finally snapped. I stared at the message until the screen went dark. Then I opened my banking app and canceled all the automatic payments. Their mortgage, car loan, credit cards, utilities, everything. All set up on my account years ago when they claimed they needed just a little help with the bills, which had somehow become permanent arrangements. My name is Julia. I'm 35 and a financial analyst. This is the story of how I stopped paying for the love that should have been free. 3 days before canceling those payments, I stood in the hallway of my childhood home, looking at the familiar wall of family photos. My sister's graduation, her wedding, her first baby. In every photo, my parents beamed with pride. My own achievements weren't captured in any of them. After 35 years, I should have been used to it, but I felt the familiar tightness in my stomach. "Julia, is that you? Come help me with the dishes," my mom called from the kitchen. I hesitated. I hadn't come here to help with dishes. I'd come to set boundaries after years of financial manipulation. But old habits die hard, and I found myself walking into the kitchen anyway. Mom was arranging an elaborate spread of appetizers for Margaret's promotion celebration. "Can you finish this while I get ready?" she asked, already wiping her hands on a towel. "Your dad got the wrong crackers. Margaret likes sesame, not plain." I nodded and took over. Same thing. Different day. My phone buzzed with a text from Sharon, my ex-mother-in-law. "Did you tell them yet?" I hadn't. How do you tell your parents you're cutting them off after years of supporting them? How do you explain that their only grandson didn't even include them in a school family tree assignment? The front door slammed and Dad's heavy steps approached. "Julia," he said, barely looking at me, "where's your mom?" "Margaret will be here soon." "She's getting ready," I replied. He nodded and disappeared into the living room without saying anything more. I quietly arranged the crackers, thinking about all the times I'd stood in this kitchen, hoping for approval. My scholarship to UCLA, my promotion, the birth of my son. None of it had ever been enough. They always focused on Margaret, their miracle child. I was just the practice run. 6 months ago, things had changed. They started calling weekly to ask about Mark, inviting us to dinner, offering to babysit. I wanted to believe they finally cared, but when Margaret's promotion happened, I realized the truth. They just needed money. Mom returned to the kitchen wearing the blouse I'd bought her last Christmas. "Did you finish the appetizers? Margaret will be here soon." I nodded and slid the tray toward her. "We need to talk." Her face shifted from happy to nervous. "About what? Can it wait until after the celebration?" "No," I said firmly. "I'm stopping all financial support." Her face went pale. "What financial support?" she asked, feigning ignorance even though I'd been paying their car loan, house repairs, vacations, everything for years. I pressed my hands against the counter, trying to stay calm. The car loan, the credit cards, the house insurance, everything. She stared at me, shocked. "Why would you do that after all we've done for you?" I couldn't help it. I laughed bitterly. "Oh, what exactly have you done for me?" "We raised you. We made sure you had food to eat." "That's the bare minimum," I snapped. "When Randy left, who actually helped me? When Mark needed to go to the doctor, who stepped up? When I got promoted, who even noticed? Not you, never you." Dad came into the room, looking confused. "What's going on?" Mom turned to him, her voice rising. "Julia says she's cutting us off after everything we've done for her." Dad's face darkened. "Is this about that text? We already explained." It's about everything, I said, my voice shaking with frustration. It's about Mark calling Sharon grandma, because she actually treats him like a grandson. It's about you skipping his birthday to go on Margaret's trip. It's about me needing emergency surgery and you refusing to pick up your own grandson because Margaret had a dinner party to attend. The memory of that night came flooding back. I'd been rushed to the emergency room for appendicitis, doubled over in pain. All I could think about was Mark alone at after-school care. "Can't Randy pick him up?" Mom had said when I called, clearly annoyed. I could barely explain that Randy wasn't even in town. "We can't leave now. Margaret would be upset," Mom had said. Then the words that sliced through me, "and he's just so much work. Sometimes he's a burden." My own child, a burden. But Sharon had dropped everything. She'd picked up Mark and stayed with me at the hospital. That was when I realized the difference between obligation and love, between family and true family. Dad spoke again. "You're overreacting. We couldn't leave Margaret's dinner. You know how important it was to her. More important than their grandson, more important than me going into surgery." "I'm done," I said, my voice firm. "No more money, no more pretending. You don't get to use me when it's convenient and ignore me when it's not." Mom's face crumpled. Not with guilt, but with calculation. "The car payment's due soon, and your father's medication." They could ask Margaret. Her new salary could cover it. Or they could finally use their retirement savings, which they'd been hoarding while I paid for everything else. It's not my problem anymore. At that moment, Margaret's voice called from the front door. "Mom, Dad, I brought champagne." It was time for me to leave. I grabbed my purse from the counter. "Julia, wait!" My mom's voice was desperate. "You can't do this to us." But I could, and I was. I walked past Margaret in the hallway. She looked confused. "Julia, I didn't know you were coming to my celebration." "I wasn't," I said. "I came to take back the last bit of care I had for people who never really saw me." I forced a smile. "Congrats on your promotion." Margaret's success wasn't the issue. It was how our parents had always treated us differently. Margaret looked unsure for a moment. "Thanks. Are you leaving already?" I nodded quickly, not trusting myself to speak. Let them figure things out. Let them face the consequences of their actions. The drive home felt surreal. Tears filled my eyes, but they weren't from sadness. They were from relief. The heavy burden of trying to earn love from people who should have given it unconditionally had finally lifted. Mark was at Sharon's house. My ex-mother-in-law had sent me pictures. Mark covered in flowers, smiling, completely happy. Real love. No strings attached. Family isn't about blood, it's about the people who stay and make you feel accepted. 3 days later, I sat in the emergency room, watching the doctors put a cast on Mark's arm. My phone buzzed with another text from Mom. "Julia, please reconsider. We need you." I turned off my phone and focused on my son. "How are you feeling, buddy?" "It hurts," he said, his eyes wet with tears. "But I was brave, right?" "The bravest," I assured him, squeezing his good hand. The doctor approached with discharge papers. "He's all set. Just follow these care instructions, and we'll see him in 6 weeks to remove the cast." As we walked to the car, Mark looked up at me. "Can we still go to Grandma Sharon's on Sunday? She's making spaghetti." "Of course we can," I promised. "Nothing's going to change that." And I meant it. Nothing would change the family we had built, the one based on love, not obligation. 3 months passed with no calls, no messages, just silence. Then one Tuesday afternoon, my phone lit up with a call from my mom. Though I had blocked her number after the emergency room incident, she was calling from my father's phone, which I hadn't blocked yet. I almost ignored it, but curiosity won out and I answered. "Julia," she said, sounding stiff, "we need to talk about this situation." "The situation," I repeated. "Financial struggles," she said, "without my help." "Nothing to discuss." There was silence. Then her voice turned bitter. "Margaret won't help us. She says we need to learn to manage our money. The car got taken away yesterday and the mortgage is 2 months behind." "Not my problem anymore." "I'm sorry to hear that," I said, though a part of me still felt sorry for them, as if it was my responsibility to make sure they were okay. You can't just leave us like this. We're your parents. Blood doesn't equal emotional support, I said. You never truly played the role of parents. I have to go. Mark has soccer practice. Julia, don't... I hung up and blocked her number. And then, realizing she'd called from Dad's phone, I blocked that number too. I wasn't going to leave any channel open for manipulation. Across the kitchen, Mark was working on his school project, a family tree. "How's it going, kiddo?" I asked, leaning in. At the top, he had drawn Sharon and Brian, labeling them Grandma and Grandpa. Below them were Mom and Dad under my name, and Randy's. At the bottom, himself. No Margaret, no my parents. "Is this everyone in our family?" I asked gently. He nodded, completely sure. "These are the ones who love us." Simple, honest, true. 1 week later, my phone rang. It was Margaret, rare because we didn't talk much, maybe twice a year. Our conversations were polite but distant. Her number wasn't blocked since I had no reason to cut her off completely. "What did you say to Mom and Dad?" she asked, her voice sharp. "They're falling apart over money." I kept it simple. No more financial help. They have their favorite now. She can help. There was a long silence. They think you're being cruel, that you're getting revenge for the past. But was it cruel to stop draining myself for them? Was it revenge to hold them accountable for years of neglect? "I'm not punishing anyone," I said. "I'm just done pretending." Margaret sighed, a sound full of weariness. "They're never going to change. You know they've always been like this." It was the first time she'd admitted the truth, a rare moment of understanding. She had always been the favorite, and I had always been left behind. "I know they won't change," I said, "but I have." There was a pause. "Good for you." Those simple words were perhaps the most genuine thing she had said to me in years. After we hung up, I thought about Margaret. Did being the favorite child come with its own struggles? Maybe. She had her reasons for pushing me away, just like I had mine. We had both been forced into roles we didn't choose. Later that night, after Mark fell asleep, I sat on the back porch with a glass of wine. A cool breeze touched my skin as I thought about inheritance. Not money, but emotional inheritance. The beliefs passed down about love, worth, and family. My parents had their own scars, believing love had to be earned and that children owed something to their parents. But cycles don't have to keep repeating. We can change them. Mark would inherit something different from me. The truth that love isn't a trade, that family is about choice, and that the most important thing is just being there. My phone buzzed with a message from Sharon. "Brian's making his famous chili this Sunday. You and Mark coming." I smiled as I typed back. Wouldn't miss it. This was my legacy now. Not guilt, not duty, but choice. Connection. Love freely given and fully received. For the first time in my life, I felt abundant in the things that truly matter. Looking back, I could finally see the pattern clearly. My constant struggle for approval, my desperate desire to be noticed. My worth had always been tied to their approval, or the lack of it. Every milestone, every achievement had been a silent plea. See me. Care about me. The walls of my childhood room had been covered in certificates, trophies, awards, all collecting dust while my parents cheered for Margaret at her games and performances. When I got a full scholarship to UCLA, Dad barely reacted. "California's too far. Who's going to help your mother?" Not Margaret. Never Margaret. She was too busy being the center of their world. I went anyway. I worked through school, built a career, and reached a point where I didn't need help from anyone. Then I met Randy, charming, confident Randy, who made me feel like the most important person in the room. His family accepted me right away. They made me feel heard and valued. Sharon called just to check in. Brian showed me how to change the oil in my car. It was so different, this easy acceptance. When we got married, my parents complained about everything, the venue, the date, the menu. Margaret, my maid of honor, looked bored during the ceremony. My parents left early because Margaret had an appointment the next morning. Randy's parents stayed until the end, helped clean up, and treated me like I was already part of their family. When Mark was born, things should have been different. He was their first grandchild, but they visited once, briefly. Mom held him awkwardly before handing him back. "He looks like Randy," she said, like that explained everything. Sharon and Brian, though, were different. They brought us food, helped with Mark when I needed a break, and treated me like I mattered. Then Randy left. A text message, no face-to-face conversation. Sharon found me crying on the bathroom floor. She packed a bag for Mark, took us both in, and stayed with me while I tried to figure out my broken marriage. My parents? One phone call. Mom's tone had been almost satisfied. "Men don't appreciate women who focus on their careers. I warned you." As if my ambition had been the problem. Like I deserved to be left behind. The way Randy fought for money but didn't care about custody was harsh. He wanted freedom without responsibility. Sharon and Brian were stuck in the middle, torn between loving their son and being disappointed by his choices. "You're still family," Brian had said, firm and certain. "That doesn't change. Mark is our grandson and you're his mom. It's simple." Simple for them, but not for my parents. Eventually, as legal bills piled up and being a single mom with a full-time job became too much, I turned to my parents for help. Just temporarily. Just until things got better. My dad grudgingly wrote me a check. "It's small. Don't expect this often. We're not a bank." But when their car broke down the next month, they asked me for help right away. "Can you cover this? Just this once, until we're back on track." That one time turned into many. They kept asking for more, and I kept giving. I used my financial knowledge to set up auto payments from my account, telling myself it was temporary but watching as it slowly became their expected support system. I held on to a foolish hope that if I just gave enough, maybe they'd finally care about me like they cared about Margaret. It was pathetic, transparent, desperate. But I couldn't stop, not until I finally realized the truth. It had never been love. It had been an exchange. And my financial help had just been buying their temporary attention, not their affection, not their real care. That realization hurt. But in that pain, I found freedom. I didn't need to prove I deserved love anymore. I already had it. From Mark, from Sharon and Brian, from friends who cared, from people who respected me. I had found a family of my own, not the one I was born into. 6 months after cutting off financial ties, 3 months since that call with my mother on my father's phone, I was finally understanding what true freedom was. Not just being free from obligation, but from the need for approval from people who couldn't give it. My worth was never about their recognition. I had always been enough. They just failed to see it. Mark ran into the kitchen, snapping me out of my thoughts. "Mom, Grandma Sharon says she's making spaghetti tonight. Can we go?" Grandma Sharon, a title earned through love, not blood, through care, through countless small acts of kindness. "Of course, buddy. Grab your shoes." As he raced to the door, I felt a deep appreciation for this strong, bright child, for the family we had built based on choice, not obligation, for the wisdom that hardship had taught me. Sometimes the best lessons come not from what we inherit, but from what we learn through pain. From breaking cycles, from trying to do better. My parents had taught me exactly what kind of mother and person I would never become, and for that, I was strangely grateful. As I drove to Sharon and Brian's house with Mark chatting excitedly beside me, I felt something shift inside. The journey from needing approval to finding peace, from seeking validation in others to finding it in myself. It was complete. The weight of family expectations, emotional debts, old patterns, they had been too much to carry, but now I had let them go. And what remained was something lighter, purer, all mine. Family, love, belonging, not transactions, not obligations, not desperate attempts to prove my worth, but choice, intentional, grounded in the quiet certainty that, finally, I was exactly where I was meant to be.